We came for salvation. We came for family. We came for all that's good. That's how we'll walk away.
Aloha, and welcome to the Layman's Lounge podcast, a ministry of the laymanslounge.com, where we exist to bring everyday theology for everyday life. And just by way of FYI, we just started a Facebook page called Theology Applied. It's a place for butchers and bakers and candlestick makers, as well as failures, jerks, and know-it-alls. I'm the chief man there, of course. So head on over and join us to discuss things like work, leisure, hiking, sex, beer, art, vaccinations, law and gospel, sleeping, Herman Bavinck, parenting, the Psalms, self-image, coffee, the Avett Brothers, hippies, and podcast interviews like this one today we have with John Tyson. So head over to Theology Applied Facebook and join the conversation. Brother, thanks for making the time to chat today, especially since it's August 17th, release day for your new book, The Intentional Father, a practical guide to raise sons of courage and character. It's a book that you wrote to, as you say, quote, help overwhelmed but determined fathers raise men of consequence. And if you're a father and that line doesn't get like the hair on your neck standing up and stir you, then you need to get slapped in the face. So
that was my dream in writing it. I just imagined Dad's neck hair standing up everywhere. That was the vision. Thank you for articulating that.
It happened, bro. So August 17th, make it happen. I just bought one for my brother. Okay. Hey, are there any standard book release drop celebrations or traditions in queue for today?
You know, I mean, I don't know if this is legal or not. I tell you what I did. I went and got some fatty brisket from Martin's Barbecue here in Nashville. And I've been saving one of my favorite cigars for the last week for this exact moment tonight. So I will sneak out on my own and in a Spurgeon-esque way, for the glory of God, honor him with prayers and the waffling of the leaf. It's a leaf cigar. That's okay. The brand.
Long may that smoke fill the earth, brother. The book drops today. We're giving away 2 copies. Go to Theology Applied Facebook and get involved. And if you seem like you actually care about being intentional, we'll give it to you. You're gonna hear John. He just makes it clear. You're not shooting from the hip here. To be a dad, we're not shooting from the hip. You got to be intentional. Like every moment counts. Everything's a discipleship moment. We'll hear that. John Tyson's a church planner and author and might be the most well-read and prepared pastor you will ever come across.
That is not true.
It's true. Well, maybe, yeah. I know he knows Keller. I think Keller says like 12. I wanted to ask you how many books you read, but I didn't want to I don't know, but I am curious how many books you read. Every time I listen to a sermon, I'm like, this guy knows everything about this subject today. I do appreciate that.
No, I mean, yeah, man. I mean, gosh, where do you want me to start? How many, on reading a theology of preaching, what it was like being mentored by Keller, or talking about intentionality in parenthood? Let's go all the places.
So he's a man of reading and prayer, and he enjoys a proper cup of smug coffee. I never met John, but he has, more than anyone else, living or dead, impacted me more, like down to the core of my being. His 65-page book, A Creative Minority, Influencing Culture Through Redemptive Participation, changed my life more than any other book I read. So please buy that. And last by way of introduction, this is his liner. This is this one liner that I've copted. Theology that can't be dismissed with power that can't be denied. Yes, sir.
That is the New Testament. That is the New Testament.
A fellow charismatic, rooted in truth. So John is a butcher by trade who cut his teeth in shanks in Adelaide, Australia. And so I have to ask you, especially as a fellow son of the 90s, was the meat shop conducive environment to listening to Frente on the Discman, or was there another shop favorite soundtrack?
Let me tell you what was happening back in the 1990s at Elizabeth South Meat Store in Kentia Meats. There's a pecking order in the community of men. It just happens. So I'm working with probably on any given day between 6 to 10, like straight up adult butchers, like just fully formed, hard-hearted, thick-skinned, violent, godless men. Okay. And I am this, pretty skinny little teenage kid who comes in. So I had no control over the radio until they all went home and I cleaned up all the crap at the end of the day. The alpha at the time was a guy named Derek, an old English guy. And he had it set onto like late 50s, early 60s golden era. So my knowledge of that era is breathtaking. People are often like, how do you know all the lyrics to, say, Up on the Roof? It's like, I heard this 1,000 times in my teenage years. So it was dominated by golden oldies. And when I had time, I would put the Pearl Jam on. Little Rage Against the Machine, Little Public Enemy, Fight the Power, stuff like that. You know the drill.
Yeah. No one from Australia. Who even is from Australia besides Frente? I don't know. Do you?
Cold Chisel. All the best actors in the world. I mean, like Chris Helmsworth, Nicole Kidman. I mean, all the other Academy Award winners. Australia's like, listen, Australia is punching above its weight in terms of acting. Acting and swimming. I'll tell you right now.
What's the difference between the involved father, but he's shooting from the hip, and an intentional father with a predetermined path to take his son down?
Okay, so you're referring to like a little paradigm that sort of opened the book. In the book, I start by talking about 5 kinds of fathers, and these are based on probably 25 years of just observations of the kind of dads that are out there. So the first kind of dad I talk about is an irresponsible father, and he is just basically a sperm donor, just shows up, gets someone pregnant, walks away, doesn't, for whatever reason, hasn't come to terms with the fact that he has brought a life into existence. And he is in a sacred partnership and has profound responsibility. So irresponsible, just walks away. Then I talk about ignorant fathers, and these dads who just don't have a clue what they're doing. I mean, they don't bother to learn like developmental psychology. They don't bother to like emotionally invest in their kids or teach them. They just don't know what to do. Then I talk about inconsistent dads, and this is where a lot of folks struggle. They're they're divided between personal brokenness and ambition, and being present for their kids. Involved dads is like the good typical dad we're thinking about. Goes to the games, has the sex talk, helps him learn to drive, that sort of a thing. It's good, it's solid game, it is the foundations of life. But an intentional father doesn't just want to impart the basic tradition of wisdom. The intentional father wants to ask the question, who is this young person specifically? How has God made them? Why were they put on planet Earth? What does God want to do through them? And then they consciously work to develop them and prepare a path for them to become who God wants them to be. Jung said the greatest burden anyone will bear is the greatest burden a child will carry is the unlived life of the parent, which basically means if parents try and deal with all of their anxiety and their lack of happiness and project their own desires onto the life of the kid, it'll just crush the kid. So an intentional father is asking the question, who is this? And how do I utilize my skills, knowledge, community, resources, training, preparation to help them be the person that God wants them to be? So it's not generic good fathering. It is specific, customized, in-depth parenting.
Why is it that so many dads, like at least the involved dad or the inconsistent dad, who full well know that raising sons of consequence, like it's the utmost importance, and they would even admit it, but in the cracking open of a book like the one that you wrote, The Intentional Father, would scratch that God-given itch to rear the boys unto honor. But instead, like those guys, and even me, we're just reading like obscure analysis between like Bart and Kuiper's Lapsarian views. What is wrong with
dude?
us?
Bart's been cancelled, by the way, dude. All the letters came out, living with his assistant, with his wife, broke his wife's heart. They were buried together. I mean, Bart's cancelled, so forget about it.
Sure.
Barham Declaration, dead. Okay. I think we fail to take into account, like, I don't think, honestly, I don't think many dads, if any, consciously think, I want to screw my kids up. I want them to look up to me when they're adults and hate me because I failed them. I don't think that that's what people want to do. Nothing softens and tenderizes a man's heart like a child. But we fail to take into account, like, the depth of our own wounds, our need for healing, the things that we've failed to receive. I talk a lot about being wounded by withholding. So it's like, even if bad stuff didn't happen, we've been wounded because there's things we need we were never given. And those things play a very, very profound role in our ability to step up with confidence. And so I think, a lot of dads are just like, I don't know, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And even if they get it right for a few moments, they're like, I was never given the tools and I don't know how to hang in there and do this over the long haul. So I'm not holding this up with any sort of judgment. I'm holding this up with tremendous mercy and a desire to basically empower dads and say, like, here's a head start. You can do this. You can at least do some of it. Whatever you do, just do it on purpose. And so, yeah, I think it's our deep woundedness. It's the distractions of our culture. It's the war in our hearts for significance in the world as opposed to significance at home. All of those factors are in there. So the first chunk of the book is actually designed for dads to deal with their own stories. Like for a book on fathering, I try and take that seriously. Hey, you need to figure out who you are, what you've been through, the blessings that you have you want to pass on, the wounds and curses and brokenness you want to stop and remove from your family story. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen in our own hearts first.
So what's the alternative of initiation into manhood as fostered by us fathers, as opposed to our sons going it alone in self-initiation?
Well, I mean, so the concept of initiation, like, so this language might sound quite barbaric or, like hyper masculine or whatever it is. But the thing is, every young person enters into a moment where their psychological, physical, and emotional energy is disproportionately charged with a new kind of life. And they're trying to navigate, what do I do with it? So a young man is like, goes through puberty and his body changes. And he begins to experience like profound sexual desire for the first time. And, particularly in the community of men will test him. They'll test his strength. They'll test his courage. And he's trying to figure out how to navigate the world, like the social realities, how to, deal with the opposite sex. And when some other guys look like they're doing it just effortlessly, like they were born to do it. This is dealing with a lot of insecurity, but also a lot of drive. And it's like, these are very, very confusing years. He's trying to understand morality, what's been given to him versus what's actually true in the world as he's experiencing it. So like, there's a lot happening there. And so those forces designed by God propel us outward, out of the home, out of the comfort of our family, out of the safety of our parents, into the world to explore. These energies drive us out, and they will drive us out whether we have a guide to help them like navigate these skillfully or not. But these are innate God-given drives. And so the heartache, the confusion, the pain, the rejection, the loneliness, the sadness that comes when you're trying to navigate these kinds of tensions and energies and complexities with no help is overwhelming. So it's going to happen. You will grow up. You will go through these years. The question will be, will you have loving guides who steward that energy and help you through the confusion and walk you into the complexity, or not? And so there's a guy named James Hollis, sort of a Jungian psychologist. And, so like a lot of people like Roll Heiser and Raw would reference like a lot of his sort of ideas. He said that every society sort of miraculously, mysteriously seems to have been handed the same script for raising young people, and they never talk to each other. They never coordinated this. They didn't receive like an email that tells them how to do it. It's sort of like one of those divine patterns that's present within all communities, except ours. And here's what he says the stages are. Number one, there's a conscious removal, a severing from the world of the child into the world of adulthood. It's often violent, and it's often not done. It's not done by consent. You're just taken and you're pushed into this. Number two, there is some sort of death of childhood. There's either some sort of ceremony or rite that puts away childish things, so you can't return down that path. Then there's an impartation of what he says, three things. Number one, the religion and meanings and symbols of the community, the way they make sense of the world. Number two, the way they have a history as a community, so what it means to be a part of that particular community, and then the roles and responsibilities needed to function as a healthy member of that community. Then they're sent out on what he calls the ordeal, often on their own, where the lessons that they have learned are summoned in real life encounter. So they have to see, do I have courage? Do I have strength? Have I learned anything that's been imparted to me? Then there's a recognition from the community that you've passed the test, and there's a reintegration back into the community, welcomed as an adult to participate in common life and work for the community's good. So we said, like, almost every society that's existed has had some sort of plan like that, except ours. And so our kids, like, they're not invited into something. They're encouraged actually to keep childish things all the way through into their late 20s. So there's no death of childhood. Nobody gives them a shared story, a shared community framework. Nobody talks to them about the roles that are actually required for the common good. It's all just about self-actualization and success. They're rarely given an ordeal. Like, you got parents who are hovering around them rather than pushing them into the world to help them gain confidence. Yeah. They're rarely blessed. They don't move into adulthood blessed. And if they are blessed, it's normally by an institution that grants them accreditation for making it through it. Wow. And they're certainly not reintegrated with responsibilities to the common good. Yeah. And so because we live in a modern society, everything's about rights. It's what society owes me rather than what I owe society. There's just, like, it's total chaos. And what you are looking at right now in America and large portions of the world is total chaos, because a generation has tried to self-initiate, has no idea what to do with the energy it possesses. Yeah, I've got a very small vision. My vision is to normalize a path of conscious formation from adolescence into adulthood in the Christian tradition. I want it to be normal.
We need it. And you said in the book something like, may it never be said of you that, like, your son learned more from, like, YouTube and Instagram or whatever than he did from you. And then let the listener understand, we're going to get there, but this book, it's not like a theology of being a dad. It's a full-on, like, template to put you on blast to glory. So we're going to hit that. But so in the book you said, quote, the reason this part was so good. I need this from you. In the book you said, quote, the reason Christian men's movements, or men's parenting books, for example, are largely cliche or ineffective is that they are usually all about being a good man, end quote. Can you unpack that? Is that not what we're looking for? Aren't we trying to raise, quote, quote, good men with integrity who don't look at porn and they try their hardest? Isn't that the goal?
I mean, it's so now we're, like, into it, basically clarifying definitions. So I would say that the typical evangelical vision of the good man is a timid, overwhelmed, deeply insecure man wearing khaki pants and a tucked in polo, struggling to keep up with all of his responsibilities, dealing with perpetual guilt. And that guy is, every Father's Day, he's going to get a Bible with his name on it from his church. And, like, I think no young person looks up to that and says, it's Irenaeus, the glory of God is a man fully alive. I don't think anyone looks up to that and says, that's what adulthood is. Yeah. That's what manhood is, like, completely overwhelmed, drowning with inner wounds and insecurity. Oh, good, let me hurry up and become that. So I think we so often define our faith by what we're not supposed to do. Can't speak, can't drink, can't smoke, can't do drugs, can't have sex. It's just like a giant list of no's.
Yeah, bro.
Rather than one gigantic yes to Jesus and his kingdom. It's a life of passion. It's a life of risk. It's a life of sacrifice. It's a life of the miraculous. It's a life of struggle. And so what I'm wanting to do is like, I try to model to my kids, like, if this is what it looks like to be a man alive in the world, in all of my brokenness and all of my glory, you know, that like that to become a Christian is to enter into life. It's to find the true way. And so, yeah, I'm talking about like trying to wake people up to lives of attention and depth and wonder and sacrifice and significance, as opposed to just like trying not to be bad and hanging in there by doing my duty. Now, look, I'm obviously trying to paint a contrast here, and it is a little bit of a caricature, okay? Yeah. But there's something to it. There's something to it. There should be, I mean, look at Jesus. Jesus was not safe. Jesus is like punching a hole through your categories. And our ultimate goal is to help young people become like Christ, not some late modern version of an overwhelmed suburban American dad.
Received. So what is like, can you just give us like an overview? What is the primal path, the intentional father? Are they like one-liners of principles or this template? Like what exactly, if I crack this book open, what am I going to come out with if I put the hand to the plow and I don't mess?
Okay, so number one, this is a mercifully short book too. You liked Creative Minority because you could read it in one sitting. Okay, you could read it between services on a Sunday. This book, I think, is it's got a lot of charts and it's around 230 pages or something, but it's short. I did the audio of this and I just banged it out super quick. So it's not a complex book. So that's the first thing. So it's also not, it's not a daily devotional for your son. So I'm not going to do the work for you. And I think this is a part of the challenge. A lot of dads were like, why don't you just give me all the devotions you do with your son so that I never have to like grow in my theology and understanding of God's word and human culture, and I can just pass it on. And it's like, no, I want to push dads to like sort of to fill in the gaps of their own formation. And this can be a time of tremendous growth for them. So what it's not like 6 years of daily devotions and then everything's done. What it is a plan. And so going back to those sort of 6 stages from, you know, that all human cultures have had on the journey of initiation to adulthood, I basically sort of follow that. And the goal is to basically invite your son. I've got another book on daughters, but that's another story I'm working on. Just dropped my daughter at college, so I did something different for her. But yeah, it's to invite him into a conscious journey of formation that takes of the best of the male formation and wisdom tradition. So dealing with things like, how do you know if you've moved from being a boy into being a man? What's the difference between boyhood and manhood, and how do you make that transition? What are the things you have to sort of master and get right if you're going to be a confident man in the world? How do you have a deep sense of understanding of who you are? How do you understand the arc of life? How do you recognize moments and figure them out? How do you do, you know, and then how do you create, an ordeal, a challenge? I set my son up onto a gap year, and we could talk about what happened in him during that, but sending him out into the world to irreparably break their hearts so they won't be spoiled American college kids. Yeah. And then how to like bless them so they walk into the world as blessed men. You know, so it's basically, it's a plan on how to do that. If you were to ask the typical person, when did you know you were a man? What's the answer going to be? When I had sex, when I got drunk, when I got my license, when I got my job, when I brought a gun. I don't know what the culture's answers are. You ask my son, how did you know you were a man? He say, well, I did a discipleship journey for 6 years. I did this, and this. I did a gap year, hiked across Spain with my dad. We did a ceremony of blessing. And when I came out of the ocean, he laid hands on me and welcomed me to the community of men. Like he'll tell you right now, I became a man on the beach off the coast of Spain at Finisterre, you know? And so I want to help dads create that. And I think one of the roles I try and play in my church, and, you know, to some degree for, you know, folks outside of our churches, I try and sort of like read copious amounts of information. Others probably don't have the luxury or schedule to do. Systematize it, like metastasize it into desirable and usable form, and then put it out there to help other people. And that's basically what I tried to do with this. I try to read all the best books on raising sons and fatherhood and stuff. And I try to get it to its essence, and I try to put it into a plan and say to a dad, if you don't have a clue, here's how to do it. You got to fill in the blanks, but this is the outline, you know? So that's what it is.
It's not just content transfer. It's like clear, like there's clear mile markers along the ways of like this clear set out 6 years and these like clear events that have meanings. I mean, and we'll talk about this, but there's even like artifacts and gifts. Like it's pretty nuanced. I mean, but like you said, you're not living off another man's quiet time. You just sort of set up the boundaries for us, bro. So good. So in the book you said, quote, adolescent boys need to know they're being invited into a journey of growth and development out of childhood and into manhood. There needs to be a definitive break from normal life into liminal space where they can emerge and grow as men, end quote. So, bro, I tear up and get a little more than stiff lip when I hear you talk like on all your other podcasts about that, about your intentionality with your son, Nathan, as he like ran into a cold Atlantic Ocean to kick this off,
yes.
turning a page and shocking him into what was going to come. So can you even share that first process of how it kicks off, ranging from even like the 2 years of creating the hype by way of mystery, then to the severing dinner, and then getting officially underway in the ceremony?
Well, let's be clear. The severing dinner is very controversial, and in the book, it was absolutely softened to the phrase "directional dinner."
Okay.
So, like, I just couldn't get that past anybody. They're like, it's getting like repeated offense. And I was like, well, I'm glad you live at this time of history where you have an option to be offended by what all societies have done. I basically wanted so the challenge is like, you know, I'm not wanting to criticize my dad in any way. He was a very, very good father, really did a very noble job, the best he could. But, you know, there's no moment when I knew, okay, now I've got to learn to become a man. I mean, like more of that happened in the butcher shop than happened in my home. And a lot of it was like painful and like, you know, like what we would call today bullying, violent bullying, you know, like if there was such a thing as HR when I was in the butcher shop, mate, let me tell you, I'd be tapping HR twice a day. And it was just like the crap I went through was unbelievable. I would come home sometimes, 19 years old, get through my door and just break down weeping because they just like beat the crap out of me. It was hard, but it strengthened me, and I'm honestly really glad for it. It developed a lot of character in me. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I wanted my son to know, like, hey man, I just was like, you're going to have to learn to become a man. And I was sort of like, are you ready? You know, I just was trying to tee it up. I was trying to create anticipation. And so I would just tell him. So part of it, which I don't talk about in this book, which is a key component of it, is how do you develop a relationship with your son where he's going to want to spend this much time with you in his teenage years? Yeah. So I could write another book on all the stuff I did to make him want to do this. But the big part of it was, build mystery, create a slight sense of excitement and fear, and tell him he's going to go on this like multi-year journey where he's going to learn everything he needs to know about being a confident man in the world. And it's going to be filled with glory and pain and heartache and wonder. But he's not going to be alone. He's going to have me and a community of men to help him navigate it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be hard. So I'm building that up. I'm telling him, you're not quite ready. You're not quite ready. Soon you'll be ready. Are you sure you're ready? Okay, I think you're ready. And when it was, I think you're ready, he was like, crap, I don't think I'm ready. So I got this on video. I mean, I documented so much of this, and I wanted to like put it into like the most moving 3.5-minute video you've ever seen, watching him go from 18 to when he comes home from his gap year. But it was honestly like too personal. I was like, this is just, I can't put it out there. Wow. So I just put a few photos on the website. But I'm trying to get him excited about it. And then I wanted him to have a moment he would remember. So we took him to the beach. This is him and his 3 closest friends and their dads. And we basically try to, create an atmosphere, create conditions. Now, I want to be clear here. He's 13. So he's not like a 19-year-old going, tell me more about this deep mystery. He's like a 13-year-old who can't sit still, wants to play video games, and is making fart jokes. I mean, he's just a 13-year-old. So we did something like pretty weighty, and we sort of like made him feel it. And so like we built a moment, and we executed on the moment, and then we savored the moment. And a part of what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to do the Camino, because I just felt like, gosh, a 6-week hike, 500 miles, to like suffer together and just have nothing but time to talk and process everything you'd been through. And I knew that at the end of the Camino, there was a place called Finisterre where traditionally the pilgrimage had ended, and you'd go to the water and you'd leave something at the beach as a part of your pilgrimage to complete the journey. And I was like, okay, that's how I want to end this thing. I'm going to start it with him running into the water, and I'm going to end it with him running into the water. And so I try to build those bookends into it. And so, when he was 13, we did it right near Coney Island, actually, New York. And so we, like, the first part was all serious, and the second half was just like kids on roller coasters, hanging out, having a lot of fun. So I try to build it up. I try to deliver on the moment, document the moment, point back to the moment. And just let him know, hey, you're in a different space now. And there was many times he'd say, why can't I be like everyone else? I'm like, because they're not going through this path. They're missing out on this formation process. What a tragedy. Yeah, you're doing something that they can't do. And my son looks back on it now. He's 21, very fondly. Like, I think he's got a deep sense of pride. He's like, I survived the gauntlet. I'm blessed. Doesn't mean he's perfect. Like, I'm not offering a book that like guarantees anything other than minimizing regret. The only thing I promise you in this book is, if you do this, you will have less regret when your kids go off to college. Bro. Yes. So you can't control who your kids turn out to be, but like, this is giving them a noble shot and a very, very good godly chance. So
good. I just want to ask like an excursus question real quick. It's like, so just sort of putting the path and intentionality on hold. A lot of our listeners might think that they are the optimal dad if they're catechizing their kids. Why, you wouldn't say catechizing is bad or whatever, but why isn't just like catechizing enough? Why isn't that going to just do the trick?
It's insufficient. But what does it say about Jesus in Luke 2? It doesn't say, and he was catechized by his parents. It says he grew in favor and stature with God and man. And so like, Jesus had to have whole life development. And, what Jesus would have went through, by the way, I mean, he would have like done an apprenticeship with his dad. He would have learned the skills and trades, or, whoever developed him. He would have had a whole life developmental process to prepare him for this. And so look, I applaud parents who are like catechizing their kids. Like, I really do. And particularly when you study the history of revival, when I studied the Welsh revival, one theme I came up against again and again and again is that kids who grew up in homes that had a family altar were conditioned for revival. And they would describe it as like it went from the back of their heart to the front of their heart when revival came, but it was in there. So I respect that. I think it's important. It's just completely insufficient. Okay,
thank you. Can you speak to the rest of the path of this intentionality, and also perhaps pay attention to the specific investment of time to the day-to-day, as well as like the investment of a Roth IRA, and then hit intentional artifacts, and then if you could just hit those two things. It's like so compelling. This pen, bro,
pen's heavy. Pen is heavy. I read a poem actually by an author, a poet who lives in Hawaii, and on a bird sanctuary. And he told this story about getting a dictionary from his father. And he didn't know where he got the dictionary from, if it was like a door-to-door salesman or he saved up for it, but it was a very precious thing. And when his father handed it to him, he felt like he was being handed a part of something very significant by his father's legacy. And he tells this poem about holding this dictionary in his hand, the weight of it, but it wasn't just the weight of the book, it was the weight of his dad's life. And I just thought, dang, we live in a consumptive society, man. Paper plates, IKEA furniture. We don't have anything that gets passed on, particularly from men. It's very, very rare. Maybe like your daughter's like, my grandmother gave me a diamond for my ring. But it's very, very rare. It's like, what did your grandfather give you? So like a watch, hopefully like a sweet Rolex he bought in Germany towards the end of the war. I don't know, but often not much. So I was like, I want to like give my son some things that will like help him go the distance, So I tried to buy him certain gifts that I knew like had a lifetime sort of span to them, and get those to him. So like that was a big part of it. In terms of time investment, like I think a lot of folks are kind of like, I could never do that, and I'm like, you're gonna do something. If this kid's going to be in your house, they are going to be formed intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or unconsciously, by whatever you do or don't do. So do something. It can be as simple as one verse a day, one quote a day, one question a day. You can make it so simple. It doesn't have to be like, like a PowerPoint presentation on the end times with charts. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It's about intentionality, not intensity. And you're basically trying to build a connection with your son's heart so that there's an open channel of communication to guide him through all of this crazy stuff that's going to happen to him that he's going to face, so that you have like earned the right through love and presence to sort of like speak in when he needs it, to correct and discipline where he won't have resentment towards you, and love and affection where he'll actually want to share the joys with you and then bring his struggles to you. And so it's like, how much time is required to like maintain a bond over that during the teenage years with all of its complexities? It's different for every kid. For every kid. So Nate and I would do a time in the mornings, and then we do a thing called Man School every week, where the daily devotions sort of like lined up with the big theme that we were working on at the moment. And then like I would do like a deeper dive, like a lesson. And a lot of the times, mate, I was just winging the stuff. You know what I mean? Like I would get up before he got up to write the thing that day that I went through him. So it wasn't like John prepared 6 years of lessons in advance like this. I was just like bashing my head against the wall trying to keep this thing going. But I was like, I will keep this going. Amen. I will keep this going because the day will come so much faster than you think when they leave your home. It is so quick. Yeah. And I'm an empty nester now. I dropped my daughter off at college this weekend. And I'm just like, it's over. Yeah. I'll never get them in my home in this season again. And whatever I gave them is whatever they had. Now I sowed a lot of seed into them that I think will bear fruit over the course of time. Yeah. But it's just like, it's an investment of love. So here's what I'll say, like, trade your time on the television for time with your kid. Enter into their world. Find hobbies that they want to do. Do not numb through Netflix. Do not binge sports out of boredom. Like, just find stuff your kids are into and do it with them. Just have a daily sense of connection or whatever. And like, I was just resolved. I mean, I don't say this again with any sort of judgment on my father. Like, I really don't. Like, I have tremendous compassion for what he went through as a child. He grew up in a boarding school in India. And, but like most of my memories of my dad is my dad watching television, making model cars and airplanes, and there was a few moments where I was just like, is that little piece of plastic? Like, here I am, like a young man, alive in the world. Like, and like my dad never took me out, never said, hey man, you want to go just get a burger and talk? Or you want to just, dude, let's just go hang out in the city or see a movie. Like, I have almost no memories of my entire teenage years of that. Mm-hmm. But I do have memories of my father sitting in front of TV. And I just resolved, like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that for my kids. I just want to say I'm available. And sometimes I'd say, you want to hang? They're like, no, we're good. I'd be like, okay, just want you to know I'm always here for you. Just want you to know you got my time. And then you just find a balance in terms of like family dynamics, schedules, energies, and you just commit to make it work. Mm-hmm. I tried to put an emphasis on what Peter Kreeft calls the classical virtues, or the hinge virtues. Cardinal is what the Catholics call them. They mean a hinge. And he talks about, and these are from Greco-Roman society, he talks about justice, wisdom, self-restraint, and courage. And as I was thinking through, like, what foundational values do you want to put into a young man's life? I was like, we need these cardinal values, because everything hinges on them. Like, you want to raise kids, young men in the world who care about justice. Like Proverbs 31 says, do not give your strength to women, your vigor to those who ruin kings. And then so it says, like, so it just talks about, like, when you're a man with power, do not waste it on trivialities. So what does he say then? Like, speak up for the oppressed, raise your voice for those who don't have a voice, judge fairly. So, don't give yourself over to vices that inhibit your ability to, like, walk through the world with integrity. So, yeah, I wanted to, like, lay those foundational values of sort of like classical society. And so that my son would, like, care about justice. He would be a man of wisdom. He would have courage in his heart, and he'd have self-restraint. He wouldn't just give himself over to excesses in the culture. So, yeah, I think it's important to, like, lay down foundational values, and then you've got to have family values, like what makes you guys you.
Yeah.
And then he's got to have values himself.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to have, like, he's got to help navigate those sort of values within himself. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the 5 minute, 5 questions. So I guess hooch you with some quick ones. You can maybe one liner.
Let's go.
How on earth did you speak to just the fact that it seems every kid wants to grab a boob and just look at porn? It seems impossible. That's not going to happen.
It's going to happen. How you respond to how that happens is everything. Like this is not a promise that your kid won't sin. Come on, those teenage years are very, very fertile grounds for the flesh. So it's all about how you respond to it, man. Don't create a culture of shame. Talk through the why. Give them a positive vision of biblical sexuality, why it's worth protecting, not just some terrible thing to be avoided. So, when you give them a phone, talk about the importance of putting on porn filters. Talk about what sex is for. I made my son listen to a bunch of podcasts. And at the end of it, he was like, I do not want erectile dysfunction in my early 20s because my brain has been morphed by violent porn. That's his literal, like, he came out from that.
So good. All right. What about punishment? Like effective punishment?
I'm not a big believer in punishment. I'm a big believer in discipline. I'm a big believer in, Hebrews 12, that we're disciplined out of love. We're disciplined for our good. So it often so this is like this. I'm about to open a can of worms. Most of my parenting was done through social contracts, not through punishment, not through discipline. It was like we would create agreements that we both believed were fair in any given boundary, and the rewards and consequences were known. And when it came time, when the violations occurred, it wasn't like me powering up, and he wasn't like freaking out emotionally. This isn't fair. It was like, suck it up, homeboy, accept it. This is what we agreed on. And we dealt with some very painful, hard things that cost him and hurt him a lot. And he took it on the chin, like, you know what? I need to have a conversation with your dad about why I keep doing this, because I agree that what's happening now is fair. I hate it. But, it's a chance to talk about his character.
Thank you. How do you speak to, like, just low self-esteem, or not really having friends or whatever? What one-liners do you return to, or what truth? Or
oh man, I say to my kids all the time, repeat this after me: I'm gonna make it. Just say that after me: I'm gonna make it. You are one of the ones who makes it. You will get through this. Repeat this after me: I will get through this. I try to talk to them about timing. I try to talk to them about waves of emotion. I spend a lot of time talking about seasons of life, and how to navigate the complexities. What do you do with a hard season? Those sorts of things. But most of the time I was like, bro, I'm here for you, man. You need to go out and do something fun. I'm ready.
So good. A few weeks ago, you preached on maturity. I think it was called like maturity, the maturity we long for. Yes. And you spoke to the plight of basically the 20-year-old gamer who's narcissistic, a know-it-all, and knowingly lost. Man, I think a lot of dads listening, that might be their kid. Any thoughts there? And they're probably live in the basement for the next 20 years too. So we do have that going for us.
Man, I'm not trying to like Driscoll this thing. I'm not trying to. I believe that being a man is a gift. It is a gift. It is a responsibility. And I want men to reach their redemptive potential. And I know the enemy's plan is to keep them stunted and to squander the God-given gifts they have. So I'm not trying to slap people or shame people. I'm trying to show them that God has more for them, and that they're like, regardless of who they are or whatever sort of stereotypes they fit into, God can use them in significant ways. Mm-hmm. And so it was more like through the lens of like the pain of squandered possibility, rather than just like shaming people for like medicating life because it's really hard. So yeah, the early 20s are like particularly complex. Yeah. You know, so I'm in a whole set of different discussions. My son's 21 now. He's just getting ready to go to Kona, going to do a little YWAM, University of the Nations, come over there.
That's us, bro. That's me.
Are you at Kona?
I'm YWAM Kona.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Somehow I missed that.
Yeah.
So anyway, your boy Nate Tyson, he'll be showing up there in September, whenever that is, September 30. And, you know, but he's had like trying to find his way in college because his gap year kind of jacked him up a little bit. Because, you know, he just spent a year around the world and then he comes back to regular college and dudes just want to like, you know, smoke weed and be dumb. Yeah. And he's kind of like, I don't want to do this crap. This is not high school part 2.
Yeah. But...
You know, but it was hard to find people that had the same level of vision. And ultimately he was like, I think sort of sensed he had like a missional spirit to him. He wants to be at the redemptive edge of culture. He don't want to settle down in a regular American church. Like he said to me, he's like, Dad, I love you. I've got so much respect for you. I just don't want to do with my life what you've done with your life. And I was like, I don't want you to, man. I don't want anybody else to do what I've done with my life. This crap's been hard, you know? I said, you got to find God's call for you, but he's going to do fire and fragrance. It's just like he's a worshiper, a man of prayer in his spirit, and he's coming over to do that. So, yeah, so I've got a lot of compassion on the early 20s. And I was, you know, one of the critiques of YWAM is they give you this amazing DTS and they just dump you back into middle board America. And kids get disillusioned. Was it all a dream, you know? And I think what I didn't want to happen with my son was like, I give him this psycho intense discipleship thing and then be like, all right, bro, see ya. You're a blessed man. Go. Like I want to walk with him. I want to navigate the complexities and transition from an authority figure in his life to sort of like a friend in his life, you know? So
good. I never plug my own stuff, but go to ywambeyond.com and we're trying to help those of you guys who have returned home and you're like, I've been ruined for the ordinary. So anyways, thank you. All right, last question, brother. Can you speak to the warning quote? You quote someone saying this, and again, it's the last question. Beware of the soul-sucking voice of reasonableness.
Reasonableness, yes.
Can you hit what?
Yes,
like those are thinking, this is impossible.
Yes. That's from a book, The Power of Moments. And that's an amazing book. Every dad has to read the book, The Power of Moments. Every human does. And it's basically about realizing that our lives are a bunch of ordinary days strung together with a few life-changing moments. And so the book basically asks the question, how do you create the 4 kinds of life-changing moments? Like, and a lot of leaders, a lot of parents are like, they're trying to do this. They're just like, they've got instincts and intuition to do it. This is a book on how to do it with skill. And one of the things they say in the book is like, you know, so the analogy I use, I think I use this in the book. I think I use this in the book. You know, if your son says, I've never had a Philly cheesesteak, you could drive him to the mall and go to O'Charlie's and have a Philly cheesesteak and then walk around and say, great spending time with you. Or, and this is true, there is a Philly cheesesteak in Philly that is made with Wagyu beef and like gold truffle, and it's $100. And you could get in your car and you could drive to Philly and you could make him put a suit on and you could walk in and you can eat a $100 Philly cheesesteak. And the question you want to ask yourself is, 10 years from now, when you say the word Philly cheesesteak, which will be remembered in your son's life? And the basic point is like, don't let the soul-sucking voice of reasonableness says we can't afford it, we don't have enough time, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. It's like, no, seize the moment. And so again, everything can't be like that. And if everything was like that, it would be ordinary and it wouldn't be formative. Good. So you got to pick these moments, you got to find these ways, you know, like, so again, like a couple of classic ones. I did with my son, the classic, come to the front office at school. We've got a family emergency. And the family emergency was Nate wanted to see the new Star Wars film. So I just took him out of school and we went and saw Star Wars and went and hung out. Like he talks about that to this day.
Nice.
Now, if I did that every day, it would be called his life. But because I did it once, he was like, dang, I remember that. That was amazing. So, yeah.
We've been talking with John Tyson. The book is The Intentional Father, a practical guide to raise sons of courage and character. Go get it, because this must be stronger than that. We're praying for you, dads. And we're waiting for the 50 pieces of my heart, the deposits, whatever that might be. We're waiting, bro. I know. I bet you're so sick of hearing it. I saw on Instagram, everyone wrote, cool, I'm glad you released that. When's the one for the daughters? Thank you so much.
No way. I get that. I mean, I just dropped my daughter off at college 3 days ago, and I need to let my little heart heal a little bit. And it's actually really hard. People don't understand. Like, I actually did this stuff with my daughter differently. Like, I wrote out like daily devotions, 45 minutes. Like, I tell you, each one of them was a full sermon for my daughter. I did charts. I did PowerPoint. I mean, it's like the best content. My daughter got the best content I've ever come up with. And, but it's like, I'm trying to make it palatable and usable. So I handed it to a couple of friends to beta it, and they were like, dude, it's too intense. So because I have a unique relationship with my daughter, like, you know, like we just processed it really well together. But I'm trying to so I've got to basically rewrite a year's worth of curriculum, and I'm trying to finish my doctorate and then write a book on sex and a book on the church. And so I've got like so much stuff going on, but I'm trying to get it out within a year. So
awesome. Thank you for your time today, brother.
No worries. So great to hang out, mate. And say hello to Nate when he's there on campus.
It's happening.
We came for salvation. We came for family. We came for all that's good. That's how we'll walk away. We came to break the bad. We came to cheer the sad.